Hello, I am Dr. D.D. Sawant from Department of Geography, J.A.T Arts Science and Commerce College for Women, Malegaon District, Nashik. Today's topic that is a hydrological cycle. So, what is the hydrological cycle? The hydrological cycle is the system which describes the distribution and movement of water between the earth and its atmosphere. So, here about one third of the important 100 elements which occur naturally in the earth crust are very important for the sustenance of life in the biosphere. Out of these essential elements, oxygen, carbon, and hydrogen are by far the most essential elements for the existence of living organisms because these three elements constitute 90% of dry weight of the organic matter in the biosphere. Out of these three essential elements, hydrogen in the form of water and oxygen together make up 80.5% of the total weight of all the living organisms. Since hydrogen enters the biosphere and goes out of the biosphere in the form of moisture, mainly in liquid form, the hydrogen cycle is discussed in terms of water cycle or hydrogen cycle. So the water resulting from the association of hydrogen means that two atoms and H2 means hydrogen and oxygen, one atom which is O and H2 is by far the most abundant substance in the biosphere. The water is found on the globe in various forms. For example, number one is a gaseous form, which is in a vapor and moisture. Second one, that is a solid form, which is called as a ice. And third one, that is a liquid form, which is a water. The water is found in various locations. For example, lakes, ponds, tanks, rivers, oceans, groundwater, soils, surface and subsurface rocks, living organisms as water vapor in the atmosphere, as snow and ice in the high latitudes means the polar areas and high altitudes means the hills and mountain areas. The water is very important substance in the biosphere because it is able to dissolve almost all substances. It has great ability to store it. It takes part in the nourishment of organisms. It also helps in the circulation of elements in the biosphere, etc. The water or hydrological cycle at global scale involves the mechanisms of number one, that is a evaporation of water from the oceanic water through insolation. Second one, there is conversion of water into water vapor or moisture. Third one, that is transport of atmospheric moisture over the oceans and the continents by atmospheric circulation. Number fifth, that is release of atmospheric moisture in the form of precipitation over the continents and oceans. Number six, that is eventual transfer of water received by the earth surface to the oceans. So important being surface runoff and reverse, if you will see that which is given in this diagram. Oceanic water is heated by insolation and thus water is transformed into gaseous form, water vapor or moisture. This moisture is transported across the oceans and over the continents by atmospheric circulations, means the winds. The air is cooled because of its ascent and thus the moisture is released as precipitation over the oceans and the continents. The precipitation falls on the land in a variety of ways. For example, some precipitation falls directly in the streams, lakes, and other bodies. This precipitation falls is called direct fall, which is directly disposed of back to the oceans. Secondly, some portion of rainfall is intercepted by vegetation. Some portion of this intercepted rainfall is evaporated from the leaves and the remainder reaches the ground through the branches and stems of plants as stem flow and or aerial streamlets. Number third, some portion of rainfall reaches the ground directly as snowfall. Some portion of rainfall is lost to the atmosphere through evapotranspiration from the vegetation. Some water is also lost to the atmosphere through evaporation from the lakes, ponds, tanks, and rivers. As a sizable portion of rainfall reaching the ground surface becomes effective over landflow, which receives the streams as a surface runoff. Some portion of rainwater received at the ground surface enters the soil zone through infiltration and thus form soil moisture storage, of which some portion is again lost to the atmosphere through evaporation and plant transpiration. Some portion reappears as seepage and springs via throughfall and interflow, while some portion percolates further downward to form groundwater storage, of which some portion reaches the channel through base flow. Some portion moves upward as capillary rise to reach soil moisture storage, and some portion is routed further downward through dip transfer and enters the underlying bedrocks. Thus, the initial input of precipitation finds exit through two paths of output. For example, number one, to the atmosphere through evaporation from river, lakes, ponds, soil, evapotranspiration from vegetation, and evaporation of falling rains. Second one, that is to the oceans through channel runoff or stream flow. This process is repeated every year to make the water or hydrological cycle at global scale effective. It may be pointed out that though the different hydrological processes as elevated above maintain the global hydrological cycle through the oceans, the atmosphere and the continents, but out of the total moisture of the biosphere, and hence the 95% is never available to hydrological cycle because it is locked in the rocks of the earth crust. Thus, the 5% of the total moisture of the biosphere is available to the global hydrological cycle, of which 5% of the moisture, about 9 to 7.2% is stored in the oceans, and the remainder 2.8% is represented by 2.15% moisture stored in polar ice caps and permanent glaciers. It is believed that the global hydrological cycle involves the balance between evaporation and precipitation over the Earth's surface, but the pattern of balance between evaporation and precipitation is not uniform over the oceans and the land. Thus, hydrological cycle is very important mechanism of various biological processes in the biosphere because no life is possible without water. Though the interaction between vegetation and hydrological cycle is very limited, but the effect of hydrological cycle on the biosphere, for example, vegetation, is enormous because the vegetation is an effective medium of the circulation of sediments and chemical elements through biogeochemical cycle in the biosphere, and all these cycles become possible only through the movement of water. Though human activities have not adversely affected the hydrological cycle at present to a significant level, but man, through his ever increasing economic activities, may affect the various components of the hydrological cycle in the variety of ways. As we have seen the groundwater flow, and everyone is aware of this, that the surface runoff component is modified through deforestation under development, while infiltration component is modified through deforestation, reforestation, and afforestation, irrigation, etc. Thank you. Thank you very much.